All right, welcome back to the Wealth Accelerator, your short-term rental guide to financial freedom. I'm Matt Sanderson. I'm the host of this podcast, and I've got Eric Nelson here with me. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, man.
And it's going to be fun. I know you and I started talking, well, I guess when our daughters or our kids were at Second Baptist, looking at some schools. And so it's kind of a fun interaction we had that led to a coffee that we got together. And you said, "Hey, I'm really interested in this short-term rental thing. I want to start investing." And man, I think we had like one conversation. You dove straight in and then basically made your purchase like within 60 days. So it's a really cool story. And I'm really excited to have you on because I get a lot of people that come to me, and I'm sure you get a lot of people now that come to you now that you're an active investor, and they're like, "How the heck do I get into this? How do I evaluate properties?" All that stuff. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you, and then start to dive into your story so that we could gain some insights into what you did, and then be able to help other people that are looking to invest like you did. So hey, give me a little background. So what are you currently doing?
I guess a lot of things. My primary focus is, work-wise is, I run a team. My wife and I run a real estate team. Right now we've got 2 agents. We grew a little bit earlier in the year and kind of, reassessed and, trying to get things going back with the right fit. And so, we're in production. We primarily sell residential real estate and, really focus on the client relationships and making sure that, our clients are taken care of. Our start out though is we started out as to be flippers, and we flip properties.
How you did?
And yeah, we did. And so, that was kind of the reason we got our real estate license was initially not to even cut out like an agent. A lot of people get their license as investors to not pay an agent. We just wanted quicker access to the properties, and we were still going to work with an agent. Maybe we represent ourselves on the buy or whatever, but we were always going to list with an agent because we just felt like it was always better to have that barrier. And so we did a project in a great neighborhood in Houston, called Timber Grove. And in that duration, we ended up helping, because of one property, we ended up helping 5 families help buy or sell, or buy and sell most of them. And it kind of gave us a newfound appreciation of like, we're not going to be looked at less than, because flippers can easily be looked like they're not doing the right thing all the time. There's a lot of really bad flippers out there. And, and so we leaned in to help with families, and we really felt like a big pull. I still had a full-time job, and we felt this big pull to kind of help serve families. And, how could we make an impact on someone's home more than just try to make a quick buck on, getting the seller to sell for as low as possible so we could renovate it and sell it for the most as possible. We're like, well, let's try to bridge that gap and maximize both. And that was, 10 years ago now. And, here we are.
Cool. Yeah. So essentially, it sounds like you were, starting out as an investor, then turned broker, now turned back to investor. And
Yeah.
I think that's the cool thing that, I've enjoyed talking with you a lot about, because I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm an investor, but also a real estate broker and an agent. You kind of have a different lens on how you look at things and look at deals when you look at it from the investor side, but also the real estate agent. And so I think there's some stuff that we could talk about through this podcast together, because there's a lot of investors that are going to be listening, but not necessarily agents as well. I think those two things together, create some really cool insights that we can be able to share. And so, man, what I would love to hear from you, now you successfully have your property. I won't say the name. You got to stay tuned to hear where the market is, but a successful property that's been live for, about 40 days now. But before we get to this, I want to go back to where we started at that coffee together, because there was a reason you came to me and we were talking about it. And what I always like to talk about is, everyone has their why of why they did it. And so let's start there, man. Like, why did you do this in the first place?
Oh man, we could probably talk the whole time on that, we're so my wife and I are kind of, I don't want to say like first generation successes, right? But we didn't come from this long line of, financially wealthy families. And so we've kind of looked at how are we going to leave something beyond us rather than the other way around. And real estate is the one thing that we understand and we know. And so like I've never been heavy into the stock market, and if I was, maybe that's where I would go, like, and so you have to go where and real estate is what we know. It's how we provide for our family every day, and how we put food on the table. And so we heard this notion, a couple years back about how, it was a really, really successful real estate person in the production side said that what they did is they went out and, for their 10th birthday, they had bought a kid or a house for their kid. And, and the reason doing it wasn't really to hand them the keys, let them live in it or anything like that. But it's like historically real estate appreciates. Like, if you find me a house that has lost value that is 60 years old, and I'm pretty sure you're not gonna find me one. And, condos, maybe they don't appreciate as much, but at least in Houston, but, like, your real estate is typically going to at least stay at the value, if not appreciate year after year. I know it's definitely getting more expensive, and so we kinda looked at it in that lens, and it's like, well, what is something that we can do beyond just, potentially, thinking it's we always 2 things are certain: death and taxes, right? So, like, at some point, we're gonna die, and every year we have to pay our taxes. So why try to act like it's not going to happen? And we all have a time, we all have a number, and it's just a matter of when it comes. And so it's like, well, why wouldn't we want to have something sooner rather than later for our kids? So we have 2 kids, a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old, and so we kinda looked at the premise and was like, "Okay, well, I don't wanna buy a long-term rental in Houston because the margins just aren't there." My 9-year-old, he actually really enjoys to travel. Like, if I called him right now and said, "Hey, do all your homework. We're gonna go skip school tomorrow," which they're out anyway, but we're gonna go skip school and we're gonna go take a road trip overnight somewhere. He would do it in a heartbeat. So getting him excited about travel's not a hard thing to do. And so we bought this property, and the intent is that's his house. And at 9, it doesn't have the same weight that it we feel it's going to have at 15, 18, and the goal is at high school we kind of hand it over to him. If he wants to sell it, he can. If he wants to keep renting it or live in it, whatever he wants to do with it, the perfect world, it's paid off. Like that, it's an aggressive payoff, but that's in a perfect world where we're able to do that. And, now all of a sudden he has an asset that he can, with wise counsel, do as he pleases with. And then, like I said, we have 2 kids. So the next step is my daughter. She loves the beach. I'm not as much in love with the beach.
Your next place
I,
might be a beach house,
yeah,
man.
I hear you have a spot for sale in Seaside. But
Hey,
it's
to buy it, let me know.
yeah, we're not in the market right now, but creative financing. And so, but that is the primary purpose. And, rentals, long-term, short-term, commercial, there's so many avenues of financial benefit. And so we found one that kind of matched what we needed short and long term, which we wanted cash flow. We wanted to pay for itself and make some kind of money, and we wanted it to be a spot that we actually wanted to go to. And I had never been to Fredericksburg. Like, we actually got the house under contract, and I had never even been to the town that we bought in. We just negotiated. I'm like, I'm not going to drive 4.5 hours if they're not going to come to terms. And so we got it under contract, and we drove up there and saw it. I was in there for about 30 minutes, and then we left. And then next time I saw the house was we were the owners of it.
Now had Erica gone to Fredericksburg before? Was she familiar with that market?
No.
She'd never been there either?
Closest we had ever been was Wimberley. So
No
my
way.
stepmom has her family has a place in Wimberley, like an old cabin they've had for like 40 something years in their family. And it looks just like it did 40 something years ago.
That's awesome, man. So, okay, what I would love to do now is let's talk about the house and the success you're having, and then let's back up and then talk about your process of how you even found that house in the first place and why you landed on Fredericksburg and all that stuff. So, now we've let the cat out of the bag. It's
Yeah,
Fredericksburg, the
it
hill
is.
country,
Yes.
or the wine country of
Well, I
Texas.
hear it's wine country, but
I do like wine.
it has good coffee shops. So I'm in.
And now there's some breweries, so there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, so supposedly I hear the wineries and breweries, most of them are kid friendly. Like they have things for kids, and the majority of them have food that is actually pretty tasty. I don't know. We'll find out.
Now, have you been there yet? No, but,
I have
um,
not.
yeah, you've been there a couple times to get the house set up.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. We've stayed in Fredericksburg now a couple of times, but we haven't really gone deep exploring.
So, hey, okay, we just talked about, maybe talking about the results and then the process, but actually, let's flip it. Let's talk about the process and the results. So, when you and I got together for coffee, you told me more about your why, why the heck do you even want to do this in the first place? And then it felt like after that, like there was this fire within you that you're like, I'm going to do this. And like I can just tell when people are ready, despite fear or despite anything that they've got coming, some people are just ready to act. And, you know, from that point to where you are now, I think from that decision you made in your heart, you were going to do it. I think it was like literally like a 60-day process from start to finish of actually finding the property, closing, getting it set up, all that stuff. So, what was it in your mind that triggered? You're like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and then take this leap of faith to start this process.
I guess the talks of us doing an investment property had been years in the making. So we every year we would, sit down and we talk and we're like, this is the year we're gonna buy a rental property. And then something would happen, right? One year COVID happened. And so it's like, oh, what's this gonna look like? Then the next year was crazy boom and bust. But right at the end of 2020, we found out we were pregnant with our second kid. And in the mix of that, our son started a new school, and we decided we were going to move clear across town and build a new house. So there went all that money, right? So that one got paused. Well, then 2022, we're like, okay, this is the year. Well, then I needed a new truck, and I needed, well, I didn't need a new truck, but I needed a new vehicle, and it ended up getting the truck I got, and we were still kind of furnishing the house because, just so you know, when you build a new house, you also have to buy all new furniture to fill the new house because your old house furniture is no longer relevant,
It's true.
and you can't sell that furniture. You
It
just
does,
have to give it
yeah,
away or burn it.
doesn't even go in the front door.
Yeah, yeah. And so, it was kind of in that piece. So anyway, it was like every year it was just kind of something that we kept saying we were going to do it, and then life just kept happening. And really, at the end, the way I look at it is, we said we wanted to do something, but we just never fully prioritized doing it. In the home that we bought, we were very fortunate to have had some very quick appreciation in the because of the area we bought, the time we bought, all of that. That we went out and just got a home equity line of credit. We didn't pull it, we just had it just in case. We figured, why not have it? It's better to have it, not need it, than to need it, and not have it. And so knowing that we had that, that was always kind of the intent, was like, when an opportunity comes up, we're gonna be able to act on it. Whether it's a flip, long-term rental, short-term rental, whatever it is, we'll have an investment opportunity. And that was the rule that we set. Like, unless we're in a huge, huge problem, we're not going to just pull this money to pull this money. We're only going to pull this money if it's going to make us money and pay for itself. And so, when you and I met, really then the Lord crossed our paths in, like in October of, 23. Um, and that was kind of like, okay, well, what they're doing is cool. Good old social media. We ended up getting connected on like every outlet you can imagine. I don't know if we're Facebook friends, but
I know.
we
You
might
know,
be. I don't know.
I
If we're not, that's the only one we're missing.
TikTok?
I don't have TikTok and I don't have X or Twitter. I feel like I have enough things I have to manage. I don't want to manage those. And so that was all part of the process, right? So we met, we got connected, and then I started seeing the things that you were posting about your own personal successes, and then then more and more started coming in with STRIQ, the app, and it was like, okay, well, there's something here, and then you bought another property, then you kind of launched the app, and I think y'all bought two properties pretty timely, right?
Yeah,
With the app
or
that
one in April.
Yeah, and, so it's like, okay, well, not that I was looking for an easy piece, but when you don't know what you're doing, there the ease is where you have to trust that if something can be easy and you don't know what you're doing, then you have to trust that all the hard work has been done on the back end, right? I'm not gonna sit and invest 30 hours a week searching for properties for myself when I do that for clients, and like I'm helping far more clients in that, right? And so seeing the app in action and watching a video was like, okay, well, this can really work to help bridge that gap to that next piece. At the same time, the family is like, we should travel a little more. We need to relax. So it kind of helped us to have the conversation to not buy a house in Houston. We explored it, and I think Houston has a good short-term rental market if your palette is good for the 2 markets we have. Party market and, like, medical need market that, may be the areas to buy in are just so much more expensive than if you go into a little bit more of a destination market. And so when we met, it was like, okay, well, do we wanna be in Texas or out of Texas?
Yes, when we met, there was already, like, a flame that was already there for it sounds like a couple years, and just having that conversation was just kind of the well, the
And that the app was able to give me data, right? Like, was able to give me something to go off of, and it was in a central spot.
are you talking about STRIQ app?
I am, STRIQ, like, having that data in a central location. And look, full transparency, no data is 100%. So, like, AirDNA is pulling data that's as good as it can get. And, so you always have to dig a little bit deeper, but I'd say you get 70 to 80% of what you need to make an informed decision in a pretty quick process. And so then you just have to really weed down, okay, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to have a property that I have to get on a plane to go to and be very intentional with it? Do I want a property that I can wake up and jet out on a Tuesday and be there within 5 hours? What is it that is important to us in, cash flow and making sure that we weren't going to be coming out of pocket, you know, multiple thousands a month for 8 to 10 months of the year was going to be able to be accomplished pretty confidently. And so we looked into Tennessee, we looked into lightly into Colorado, we looked into some of the hill country markets, Wimberley, because we visited there, we kind of know it a little bit. And then Matt was talking about your Fredericksburg place. And you were talking about your personal home and how it performed. And so again, that gave me like more data to make a better decision off of. It's like, well, okay, they're doing this, and then we kind of pulled everything up, and we were actually on vacation and in Colorado, and we pulled all the homes up on the market and made sure that they were permitted for STR, and ended up seeing first house that popped up was the house we ended up buying. And Matt, you kind of jumped over it. You're right. Well, no, let's go look at this one. Let's look at this one. And I was like, no, let's go back to that first one. I feel like there's something there. And so we researched it and dug on it a little bit more. And what we found was the current property was an STR, extremely underperforming. And the owner had owned it for 30 years. It was completely paid off. He had a manager that didn't do that great of a job on it. The dates that it was outdated. It didn't really have a lot of amenities, but the bookings were through the roof. Like the number of nights it was booked. It was like almost 200 nights in last year it was booked.
Super high occupancy, just really low ADR.
Yeah, and so and he was only listed on Airbnb, and it was very dark on the like he had cell phone pictures on Airbnb, and then the property listing, the MLS listing looked phenomenal. And I was like, okay, well, it's somewhere in the middle. And we were like, okay, we feel like it's a little high on price. Let's be aggressive on an offer. And he came down pretty substantial amount. And so, it was listed at 500. We offered mid fours with some closing costs, and they came back at, like 480 and kept the closing cost in there. And so we ended up, being able to use the closing costs plus our fee and, get with a lender that could qualify us on a kind of first time home buyer for an STR.
Did you do STR or did you do second home?
It is a DCR loan.
Okay. They didn't look at your tax returns?
They looked at my 1099s.
Okay. But mostly the performance of the property is what they're looking at?
Correct. Yeah. So they used AirDNA. And it was like, right in projections of what we had estimated. Then we get it under contract and we meet again because STRIQ, the best app ever for short-term rentals, was doing an update where it had the comp dashboard. And so we had no idea what we were going to do because you're just kind of bleeding cash, right? Like you put 20% down on a house, it's 4.5 hours away. You need to do some work to it, but you don't really know what to do. So again, you go into data and
I'll pull it
the
up
comp,
and even
yeah,
talk.
the comp dashboard released, and we were right in that like 50% range. So we were like right in the mid 50s projected annual revenue. And what we ended up doing was with Matt, with you, we leaned in and looked at these comps, these homes that were at the 75 and the 90th percentile that were just absolutely killing it. And we're like, okay, well, what do these homes have that we can add to ours? And what we did is, we saw that they were open, they were bright paint. So we had already planned to paint. We saw everyone had a hot tub.
Yeah.
And we were indifferent. I personally was indifferent on the hot tub. And I was like, well, maybe we could just do it in a few months. And what we saw was, the cost of a hot tub, is roughly 10 grand, but the revenue that you generate annually is anywhere from 12 to 20 grand. So the hot tub literally pays for itself in 1 year
Yeah.
and then some, about a 20% return minimum in 1 year. And so it was like, okay, well, that's a no-brainer. Then a fire pit. And, we are fortunate to be in real estate and have, really, really good contacts here in Houston. And we called them and we said what we were doing and asked these contractors if they were willing to help us out. And we wanted a really tight timeline. We basically wanted everything done with less than 30 days. And they they made it happen.
That's incredible.
It's funny when you put a contractor into a different area, how much more they work.
Really?
Yes. I mean, they were working some nights till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning because they wanted to go down there for 2 or 3 days and then get back. So they would jam probably a week and a half worth of work in like 3 days.
Wow.
like our plumber went up there twice, and he, because of how the job went, but he went up there, got up there by like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and he would leave and come back and be back home at like midnight. And so it's, I'm not saying like that's going to happen for everybody, because to bring a contractor multiple hours away is a challenge. It's a big ask, and typically you pay a premium plus more. And we bought a lot of our own materials, and being able to source them with a very, very good friend who's in design. She's phenomenal. And, so like we kind of had the full gambit, just using the relationships we've built over the years. So we had a designer, we had a contractor, a plumber, electrician, painters, and at the end of it, my wife went up there with some family and that are much more mechanically inclined than I am, and spent a couple of days to like assemble all the furniture. And then we went up there over Labor Day weekend and built the fire pit with a friend, and well, he did most of the building. I bought all the food though.
You were a
So
good moral support.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I was like, yeah, if you needed a strong back, I was there, but a skill set wasn't really me. And, so it turned out very well. So by the numbers, all in, we're roughly 50 grand in the renovations. And I mean, that's furniture, that's clean, that is kind of all in turnkey. That's probably lighter than what it would be for the masses if you're subbing out a lot of the work, um, just because
You just had some really good contacts.
yeah, we had some really good contacts. I would say realistically, everything we needed was probably more in the 70 to 80 range.
Wow. Yeah, because you added a ton of value to that kitchen, the bathrooms. I mean,
Yeah.
backyard.
And a lot of it's that, like, we were able to buy the materials, right? So we would tell the contractor, "You have the job, but we're gonna pay the materials direct." And, that helped because you're not paying a markup on those materials.
Yeah. So, Eric, let's talk a little bit about results versus expectations. So, going into this, I think when we were doing the underwriting on the STRIQ app, we had projected, I was making about 60, somewhere between 60 and 70,000, depending on the year with my 2-bedroom home, and yours is a 2-bedroom. So, at least you had a direct comp with mine. And I didn't have a hot tub at the time. I do now because you convinced me and the data convinced me. So I was making, 60, 70 grand without a hot tub. Honestly, not even really with a fire pit either. What am I doing? I should have done this sooner. And anyway, so that was a good comp, at which, then when you look at the data here, the average 50th percent is showing 55,000. The 75th percentile is showing 76,000. I was right in between there, a little bit better than average, but not the best. And so that was, I think we underwrote your property kind of based on mine because it's very similar, it looked very, similar, type of home, age of home, no amenities really. But we had talked about, hey, let's underwrite it based on this conservative basis. But hey, who knows? Maybe you can make 70, 80 grand. Or if at some point in the future you really want to deck it out with design and amenities, heck, you might be able to hit 91,000 in revenue, but it would cost capital to get you there. So, based on that, you underwrote it based on, I think, $60,000. Based on some of the results you're seeing now, where do you think you'll actually land based on adding the hot tub, fire pit, doing some of the improvements? Like, what do you think you'll actually see based on what you're seeing from renters?
So I very optimistically believe, and I mean, like, it's realistic, but it's like I feel we can be somewhere in that 75 range in annual revenue. Um, I think there can be a point where we get a little bit more, but there may be a point where we get a little less. And because when we did the design, we went with that 75th percentile metric focus. So we try to emulate as many properties that were doing that or more, with some of the design elements that we have. I think we're going to have to climb our way up there. I feel in year one will probably be more in the 60 range, just because with all things that are marketing, online marketing, there's an algorithm on the back end. And then there's the consumer trust, right? So you've got consumer trust and you've got, an algorithm on the back end. And so when for anybody who's looking to go eat at a restaurant, you're typically not going to a place that has 0 reviews if you're not from that town, right? It's the same exact thing with an STR when you're visiting somewhere. No matter how good the pictures look, if there's not a single review, you're a little skeptical. And so we kind of are seeing that in reality playing out in real time. And so what we're having to do is not like give away the house, but we're having to be very competitive with our rates tied to the amenities of we get. So we're probably averaging in that 50th percentile, even though our design is a lot more on the 75th, because we're needing to get those bookings up, give some reviews, get some feedback. And one great thing is, with all the tools that you allowed us to, refer over to us and to help us manage this because we're managing it ourselves is, communicate quickly and timely, always be a resource. Like we treat them just like we would a client here at home in Houston, right? Like even though we may never see them or meet them or ever talk to them ever again, we might. And so we always want to make sure that we're a resource to the people that are staying in our home because just like when we're helping someone in real estate, we want them to feel like they matter. And this isn't just like a money play where we're a slumlord. And so I do feel as we get more bookings, more reviews, and get that continual momentum, STR homeowners in general are able to kind of like tier up that price at a slow pace. And then to where you're getting a premium, especially in the busy season, because you have such a great reputation. And so, where I feel for our first 40 nights, like we've far exceeded what the expectations would be in my mind. Like for someone who's a seasoned STR investor analyst, they may agree or disagree. But I feel, if you're booked 24 out of 40 nights when you started from scratch, yeah, it is busy season in Fredericksburg, but like to get 24 out of 20 out of 40 nights booked is very, very strong.
So what you're telling me is you launched mid to late September. Here we are, end of October-ish of 2024. It's been about 40 active live nights, and you've booked about half of those?
Yeah, a little more, 24 out of 40, so a little over half, about
Yeah.
55%, about
Like
60%.
and like you mentioned earlier, the recommendation, a lot of STR and investors have is, yeah, get in front of those algorithms, get momentum going. So provide higher discounts on the front end to just gain some momentum, get some reviews in there, get some guests happy, getting really good reviews, 5-star reviews, and then leverage that momentum to then start to slowly increase rates. So what I'm seeing here from your looks like hospitable account, you've booked close to $6,000 in bookings within your first, call it 35 to 40 days. And that's even with all the discounts that you provided, right?
Correct, yeah, I mean, I think when you and I have spoken, my base rate in Price Labs, which is another great tool to utilize in STRs, and I think Matt has a referral link that he can share for a free month or
So I
something.
need to create one of those suckers, man.
Yeah. But I think our base rates are similar, right? And this is pre-hot tub. So like I have a hot tub. I feel like I've got a really nice fire pit, and our flow is a little different. Your house is a little bit more square footage, but I think my base rate may actually be a little less than yours. And then I'm doing a pretty steep discount for a Monday night, Tuesday night, or a Wednesday night booking. And then another sizable discount of like 10 or 12% on a Thursday night. So because the whole concept is like, let's get people in the door. And, I made a bonehead move. So the very first booking we got, like I was pumped. Like it was less than a day of listing. I was like, yeah, we made the right choice. We were pretty aggressive on our base rate. Like a nightly rate was like over $200 a night in an off season. And I was like, yeah. And we priced it right. And I went back and I looked, and it was on a Saturday check-in. So you're not gonna get someone checking in on a Friday to check out on a Saturday for someone else check in on Saturday, check in on a Sunday. And so I allowed a one-night booking. In the bonehead mood I made, worse than the one-night booking, was I did not have a clean fee in there.
Uh-oh.
And so the system will pick up the clean fee back from the guest. Well, I had 0 clean fee in there. And so not only did I only get one night booked in a, fall season when you should have had a 2-night minimum, I was also on the hook for the clean fee. So my first booking, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna, get $200 deposited into our bank account. I was like, oh, well, it's $100 if I'm lucky. For a whole weekend, it was $100. And it was like, okay, well, that's a lesson learned. Like, let's fix this.
But you had a really
Um,
good guest, though, I think,
yeah. Well, and she
3 out of
actually
2
so I think
weekends.
that's what they do. So we messaged a bit. Not that they go out and look for the bonehead errors. I'm sure that's probably part of it, but she actually seems to kind of look for new Airbnbs when they pop up to go stay and give them a review. So maybe she's affiliated with them. Yeah, she said she's like, we love supporting small businesses. Whenever a new place pops up, we really try to check it out, be one of the first guests. She gave us a great review. And so far everyone has been very transparent with feedback. We've had one person that gave us a 4-star. Something out of our control, right? I mean, the upstairs bathroom has a slanted shower, and we have like a handheld shower stick. And she said that it was too complex. It was too uncomfortable for her to take a shower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the problem with it's the good and bad thing about Fredericksburg. A lot of these homes are older homes. I think yours was built early
In the
1900s,
80s.
1880s. Some of these homes are very different. So yeah, unfortunately, the shower of one of the showers you have is kind of angled, kind of weird, but that's kind of the beauty of the home too. It's very charming, like vintage. I mean, so it's a pro and a con at the same time. So it kind of depends on, who's staying there.
Yeah, and I mean, there was, they checked out, and then another family checked in, and they're like messaging me, and we even had a little bit of a hiccup because we had a small repair done, and it didn't fix what we were getting done. And so she called me and she's like, "Hey, a light's not turning on in this room, and that's what we were supposed to have gotten fixed."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, well, all right, we just got these outlets changed. Like, go reset the GFI and see if that worked." She's like, "All right." And so she went over there. She did. She's like, "No, it didn't work." And so I called, a contractor to get over there, and he got over there within a couple of hours. And she was like so thankful for it. She, let the guy in to take care of them and get it up and running and fixed. And so, like, I think my plug to anyone thinking of getting into STRs is like, much like your main home, it's not going to be perfect. Something's probably going to happen at the most inopportune time with a guest, but having your boots on the ground is what's most important. Like, I think the first focus is cleaners, a tried and true vetted cleaner, which you were fortunate enough to connect us with the guy you've used forever. And then having someone else you can call for other more pressing things, right? Electrical, plumbing, stuff like that. And I think that will really help the ease of mind in getting your home and keeping your home in the best shape.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So we met back in May or June. Here we are. You close in July or August, whatever that was. You do the renovations, you're up and running, you're getting bookings now. There's all these new technologies you're learning how to to use to manage and systematize this whole thing. How scary is it? Like, how bad is it? Like, be real. Like,
I
so
mean, hey, we're also in
is it
a
really that bad?
100% commission based industry, right? Like we get zero consistent salary. Um, and so at times, yeah, I mean, those things kind of come through our head. But as long as, the bookings kind of hit, little praise report is, we had to pay the October mortgage out of our personal money. For November, the name of the place is Acorn Haven. Will completely pay for itself for a November mortgage and paid for itself. I think pretty much all except maybe a couple of $100 for like the cleanings and everything. So I mean, theoretically, at a minimum, the property broke even, right? Maybe we made a couple $100, but so it's like, okay, well, how can we keep building off of this, right? Because I don't want to take the mortgage out of my personal income every month. That's not the point of it, right?
The key to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, at bare minimum, at least you're breaking even, and that's even with you taking a HELOC out, right? Like,
Correct. Yeah.
that's okay, so that's assuming your mortgage on the new home, all your expenses, plus the expenses of the HELOC that you took out on pulling equity out of your house.
Uh-huh.
So at the very least, the property is, tenants are paying for another property for you and covering the HELOC expenses.
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's gonna continue to get better and better. All signs point to we are. And, now you adjust your pricing. Like we've got a vacancy coming up in, I don't know, either this weekend or next weekend. And it's like, okay, well, let's get a little aggressive on pricing. Let's see if we can get that weekend book. And so you're like, do you want it to sit vacant or do you want it to make $800? Yeah, maybe you could make 1,000, but are you okay with 800 or are you okay with zero? I mean, that's really where it's at. There isn't oh, well, if it sits vacant, I'll make 200 with doing nothing. It's you make zero or you make whatever you can.
So let me ask you this. You've now got one property under your belt. You're still doing real estate brokerage. Where do you think you're going to go from here? Like, what's the vision of the type of portfolio you want?
So what I tell Erica, my wife, is sell more.
Make more money.
Yeah. So like at the end of the day, if our Houston business continues thriving and doing what we're doing there and we keep pivoting and doing and growing in that realm, are we trying to get to 100 STRs? No, I don't I think we would like to have 10 to 15 max really good performing ones and get to the point where like the appreciation play and you roll out of them and maybe you buy another one, maybe you don't, who knows, but like you have that ability to flip out of something if you want, right? Say we want to go buy a new house, well, we can sell a couple STRs and use that money to go into the next home of our personal residence or whatever that looks like. And so I think like that is, our number one focus is production here because the production here gives us the
Fuel
the
for sure.
bandwidth to be able to go and do all the other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not wanting to stop.
Yeah. I think one thing else we've talked about is, like essentially you've added a ton of value to that property, which guaranteed is worth more than what you bought it for. And, typical
And spray.
and yeah, a typical appreciation over the next few years, property might be worth 550, maybe 600. Who knows what it's going to be worth to where, you might could do a cash out refi and pay off the HELOC, then your cash flow is able to, increase at that time. So that's the thing I love about real estate is like there's so many options that come up over time as debt's being down and as property value goes up and as the rules become a little bit not looser with the debt that you have, but I know you've got restrictions right now in the first 3 years to not be able to do certain things because you get penalized. But after,
Yeah, so yeah, I have a 3-year prepay, but three it's a 3-2-1 step down. So when you kind of look at the analysis, year one, it makes no sense to refi. Like the only way it would make sense is if the property value went up to 700 and the mortgage rates went down to 3. Not gonna happen. Then yeah, 100% would make sense. But I mean, to pay a $12,000 prepay is just not worth it. But year two, it starts getting a little bit more balanced to where when you look into the long term upside of it, it likely could happen in year two. Rates would need to be, because I'm at 7.25, I would need about a 1% rate savings. So I would need to be at 6.25. Then it makes sense. But year three, like almost month 25, when I only have a 1% prepay, which is like under 4 grand, like 6.5, even 6.75 makes sense to to refi, if any type of rate savings, it makes financial sense to do so, even without any market appreciation.
So I think the cool thing about your story is like a lot of people are held up because interest rates and or cash, all sorts of reasons. You kind of defied both of those things and are still probably going to cash flow a little bit on this property. It sounds like, especially over time. But you have like a 7.25% interest rate, right, on the investment home. Then you got your HELOC. What's your interest rate on that?
Well, it's variable, but it's 8.99 right now. So I mean, I'm blended at 8%.
So yeah, you got this debt at average of 8%, and yet you didn't let that hold you back, and now you still have a great property that has really great appreciation potential.
And
Uh,
because I mean, your
I mean,
your cash on cash percentage is, I would estimate we're in the neighborhood of probably 13, 14%.
yeah,
And it, because like, I know when you look at a straight line cash on cash, you're supposed to take every single ounce of cash that you put into the property and see what that return is. But I also feel if you're improving the property, there you can there's a deflator on it, right? So like I know for a fact if I didn't do anything, I just bought the place, put it back on the market, I would be getting this first month, I would have probably gotten 2,700 bucks
gotcha.
because that's just kind of what he averaged.
Mhm.
And he would average what he averaged. Actually, he was more like in the 2000 range. Like he barely broke 20 grand a year in revenue.
Wow.
And, so it's like, so we've more than doubled that and by making these improvements. So because I put 50 grand into the property, now I've, gotten an extra 2,500 monthly into revenue. Well, I mean, that's a payoff in 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, beyond that, which we don't have too much time to go into, but you've got write-offs against your active income, and then you've got depreciation. You could, do a cost seg against your active income, which sounds like I need to have you on for another episode to talk more about like the tax benefits. But I mean, yeah, just that's the thing I love about short-term rentals is just it just unlocks so much potential outside of like long-term rentals and commercial real estate because you could take all of this quote unquote paper losses against your active income and it just boosts your returns even that much more beyond that 13%. But hey, I know we're getting a little closer to the end of the podcast here. One more question for you, and then we'll ask people how they can find you. But what would be your biggest or your best advice for someone that's looking to get into short-term rental investing?
Book a meeting. I mean, honestly, um, I think you don't have to jump in and go write a contract tomorrow, but get some information and know, I would say come with the why nots, then the whys. And, the number one why not is always, I don't have money. I know probably 10 people that you find the opportunity that makes sense, they will partner on it.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go find the opportunity. It's not worth their time, but it is worth their time to write a $80,000 check to invest on an opportunity. And so you can't really allow money to be an excuse because there's enough money. People have enough money out there that they're willing to find a way to grow it. That's because that's how they got their money to begin with. Another one is the time. Okay. I work I wake up at 4:30 every morning. I go to bed probably about 10 o'clock every night. The time I spend on Acorn Haven is this right here is probably the most time I'll spend the most on it all week on Acorn Haven. And talking about it and being on the podcast, right? And so it's not a taxing piece now. Now the months that we were doing the project, it was a little bit more, but that's why I was fortunate to have an amazing wife and kind of grouping that took it over where literally I just had to make sure the money was there.
Yeah. And cook dinner.
So yeah, for sure. Take care of the kids. So like the excuse of I don't have this or I don't have that, like sit down and talk through those, the why nots, because the whys are pretty simple because you obviously want to, you see the potential in it. You just need to find the property and get the process lined out on how to do it.
So now that you are, I mean, you've been an expert agent, but now you're an expert investor. If someone wanted to reach out to you and either pick your brain on, all this stuff, or even ask you for support on the brokerage piece, can you help represent investors in Houston and Texas? What markets can you help?
Yeah. So in most markets in Texas, there might be a bandwidth on certain markets just depending on where they're at in my personal access. Fortunately, I literally have friends that I've known and agents that I've known for years in every single corner of Texas. But I'm licensed anywhere in Texas. So if you call me and you're like, this is the house I want, the numbers work, I don't like I just need the offer written up and to negotiate the deal to closing, I can 100% do that anywhere in Texas.
Right, your core would be probably Houston,
Yeah, Houston, correct.
maybe
Houston.
Fredericksburg, a couple of other places as your
Yeah,
prime.
I would say anything from Houston to Beaumont, and then obviously up north to like the Woodlands, Conroe area. And then when you start going out into the country, somewhere around the mid Tri County area, like LaGrange, Weimar, probably not even as far out as Bastrop would be my like day to day ability to go. Brittle, Burton, Round Top, all of those markets. I grew up in that area, and we've got two great listings in Fayette County and one in Austin County that are phenomenal acreage places. So like we already work out there, So if if you're looking anywhere else in the country, Matt has some great contacts. I have some great contacts. You name the market, we can match you with a fantastic agent.
Love it, man. So how can people find you or reach out to you?
Best way would probably be I'm not this social media influencer, but just, follow me on Instagram, the Bayou City Team. And, then my email is Eric at thebayoucityteam.com. ERIC, the right way to spell it.
True, not with the K. Although I
Yeah,
think
no,
Eric, your wife is with
she
the
is. K-A. Her
that's
parents,
also right
bless her
with
heart.
as an A.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Well, hey, Eric, thank you so much for being on here, man. It has been so fun and so excited to see your success. And you're gonna surpass me with many more properties pretty soon, I'm
I don't
sure.
know. I feel like I need to interview you on a little success story on one of your properties.
Hey, we'll see. Just bring it on.
Oh my, how the turntables have turned.
How the tables have turned. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We will talk soon.